Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining Women in DevOps today. We've got 5 minutes until kickoff time and there's a little bit of a sign up process. So we'll just let a few people come on through, get all signed up, and then we've got a really good lineup today. We have JFrog here, who are our global platinum sponsors, which is really exciting. And as usual, we are joined by Ari for a fantastic giveaway. I always love hearing what they're going to be, and I've managed to sneak a few extras in the past, so I hope you're all excited for that. And then we've got an amazing security panel lined up for you, which Jacob Simmons, head of security at Broadgate Search, is going to chair, with some amazing leaders in the security space. Globally, we have a global panel today, which is really exciting too. So we'll give it a few more minutes and we'll kick off at past.
Shall we see what time of day it is for everyone? That's a fun little icebreaker. For me, it's 5:30 p.m. and it's pitch black outside and quite cold.
And you're in London, aren't you?
And I'm in London, UK.
It's 7:30 here in Israel. It's also dark and rainy. Not that cold, but I guess cold compared to Israel weather.
It's a summer in comparison to London.
Yeah, compared to London, it's summer.
For sure, 30 degrees.
I'm in this indoors, so yeah.
I'm with you, Stephanie.
I probably sound a little bit spoiled, but we're obviously out here in LA. It's a little bit misty and foggy. It's saying 56 degrees, which I think Fahrenheit, which I think for a lot of people is not something to complain about. But for myself, who's well acclimatized now to the LA temperatures, I'm not enjoying it. It's a little bit too cold for me, if I'm honest.
I have a confession that I actually put my heating on last night for the first time in 2 years since moving to Los Angeles. It was that cold.
Wow.
And then I looked and it was 15 degrees. It was 15 degrees Celsius. I needed the heating on. I was like, I'm officially climatized at this point.
Wow.
Literally. Welcome if you have just joined us.
I'm in Northern California. It's not bad.
I think we lost you. Jackie, you there?
I am here. Looks like my internet's kind of going in and out. I'm going to plug in a little bit differently. So sorry about that.
No, absolutely. No worries at all. And Ari, where are you? I was actually joining us from vacation as well, so absolute dedication to the cause.
Yep. Yeah, we are in. I'm actually in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee. Right, we're in the home of Dollywood. If you ever heard of Dollywood, we haven't gone to Dollywood because with a family of as big as mine, I could also put a down payment on a car, which I decided I might do instead. But now we're doing a lot of fun rides and just having a blast with all the kids. So it's been a lot of fun.
Sounds amazing.
Yeah, a real global presence here. I think actually, Stefana, how many women in DevOps panels have you done? This must be your
this year. Oh. I think this is my second this year because I did the Pride one, which was in summer, and then I used to come to the face-to-face meetups, and I think I've spoken at 2 of those. So yeah, I think this is my 4th Women in DevOps event, maybe.
We're very, very lucky to have you, so thank you.
Thanks.
Very lucky to have you, and lucky to have such an amazing panel today. Global, some real senior leaders, some real thought leaders in the security space. So we'll give it a few more minutes. Hi Anthony, hi Ben, hi Emily, hi Alfie. Alfie used to work with Women in DevOps really closely. He's gone back to university. We love that you've joined. A few more minutes to get signed up and then we will kick off with today's panel discussion. Also, can anybody else cope? It's the 2nd of December.
I know.
Where did we go?
I've been unwell this week since Thanksgiving. So today was my first day back at work, and I'm like, what? It's the 2nd of December? So 100%. It's a very short week this week.
Not only is it 2nd of December, it's 2nd of December in 2021. I feel like last time I looked at my watch, it was like 2014.
I thought you were about to say 2022. Like, that's what I was expecting to hear. So I don't know what that says about me.
No, not at all. Not at all. Okay. Okay, perfect. So let's kick off. Welcome everybody to Women in DevOps, whether you're watching us live, whether you're joining us from LinkedIn streaming, whether you're joining us from YouTube. A huge warm welcome to every single one of you, and thank you again for supporting Women in DevOps. So this month we're going to be talking about security trends for 2022. We have an amazing lineup from across the world, which I can't wait to introduce you to. Today we have Simmons holding the chair for that particular discussion, and he's head of security at Broadgate Search, part of Chailogen Group, who power women in DevOps, and he's well embedded and very excited for today's very raw, honest, and hopefully very informative conversation around what we can expect next year to look like, and what we can prepare ourselves for. Before we dive in, every single Women in DevOps webinar and in-person event, we are so lucky to be joined by our platinum sponsor, JFrog. They've been our sponsor now for 2 years and done some incredible work for the Women in DevOps community, supporting junior engineers with workshops, being inspiration for more senior engineers, and obviously being a major player in their space. And on top of all that, we are so lucky that every single time they give away an amazing prize to one lucky winner. If you are watching on YouTube, I'm sorry, the competition has now closed, but I hope that encourages you to join us live next time. So without hesitation, Aria, I'll hand over to you.
Okay. Hey, thank you so much, Lauren. Let me go ahead and do the most difficult thing I do today, and that is share my screen. And let's see here. Can everyone see my screen okay now? Yes? Thumbs
Yes,
up?
we can.
Okay, awesome.
Perhaps.
Woo, that's always a big relief when we get that done. Let me just switch one thing over here, and so I can see what I'm doing. Here we go. And I'll start over. Thank you, everybody. My name's Ari Waller, and I am the Meetup Event Manager for JFrog. And we are so excited to really have completed our 2nd year as a platinum sponsor for Women in DevOps. Such an awesome community, and we're just so privileged to be part of it. So we're so thankful for that. I'll share just a little bit about who we are. JFrog is the DevOps software company known best for Artifactory, which is considered by many as the gold standard for managing your artifacts and dependencies. And tonight, I'm very excited to report to you that our Cloud Days 2022 conference is coming in January. And JFrog wants Women in DevOps members to get in for free. As you can see on the slide there, DevOps Cloud Days is a 3-day virtual event showcasing content from JFrog, as well as the 3 biggest cloud providers, Azure, AWS, and Google Cloud, and demonstrate how developers can simplify and accelerate deployment of their applications. So you can see the agenda when you go there with the QR code and register. I'll also drop the registration link in here in just a moment as well. And if I can hit the second slide here, which I think what Lauren was referring to, is we have an exciting giveaway tonight. JFrog has a raffle for one meetup attendee to win a pair of these awesome Beats Studio buds. You can enter with the QR code or the bit.ly that you see, and I will also drop that in the chat. A winner will be selected within 2 business days, and then we'll share the name of the lucky winner with your whole community once they formally accept the prize. But very much looking forward to today's panel. Thank you so much for putting this together, Lauren. And we're so excited to be part of the Women in DevOps community. Thank you for everything you do.
No, thank you. So if you haven't been to a Women in DevOps event before, but you haven't heard of us, and I probably should have mentioned this at the start. Women in DevOps was originally founded in 2017 to be a platform for women in the DevOps space. However, we've really matured now as a group, as a community, as an organization, and we now invest all of our efforts into advocating for all voices from all underrepresented groups globally within the DevOps and SRE space, but also the tech world as a whole. So both we love bringing together both our online and our offline community to connect, to mentor, to support everyone in this space, and bringing together some incredible people and incredible stories, and really driving forward policies, diverse recruitment, inclusivity across a multitude of areas. So I'll hand over to the amazing Jacob Simmons, who's been doing some incredible work building diverse teams in the security space for the last few years, and he'll introduce our panel for today. Jacob, as well, as a bit of a side note, I'd love it if we could introduce the panel with pronouns and name pronunciations, and also a fun fact just to kick us off before we dive into some incredible questions that we have planned today.
Absolutely. Well, thanks, Lauren. It's an absolute pleasure to be here this morning. Yeah, so again, my name is Jacob Simmons. I'm an ambassador for Women in DevOps. I suppose just before we kick off then, yeah, let's go around. So I'm really honoured to be joined by the folks on our panel today, and I'll hand across to you all to go through in no particular order, to introduce yourselves. Obviously, as Lauren mentioned, give us a bit of information around, well, firstly, how to pronounce your name as well and your pronouns, but also a little fun fact about yourself as well to get us started today.
Ryan, do you want to go first?
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, I'll kick us off. I'll go myself. So again, my name is Jacob Simmons. Pronouns are he and him. Pronounced Jacob, so nothing hidden in there. Fun fact about myself: I've actually lived in probably 4 countries in my life now. So I've, as well as the UK, where I was born and raised, now based in the US with our Los Angeles team. On the West Coast. I've also lived in the south of France in Nice, and was lucky enough to study and live in Lisbon as well. So had a great chance to soak up some culture in those areas too. No particular order, I guess. Stefania, I'm looking at you at the moment. So did you want to?
Cool. I was thinking of my fun fact. I was like, okay, no pressure. So hi everyone, I'm Stefania or Stefania, depending on where you're from. So I'm from London. I've been in the DevSecOps space for about 5 years. Before that, I was a Python developer. And my fun fact before that, so it would have been about, I think it was 2012, maybe 2013. I had a YouTube video that went viral and got 11,000 views. Wow.
Wow.
I know, which felt like a lot then. Obviously, you know, pre-TikTok, I don't know. I think Instagram existed, but yeah, for you know, uni student me, I was very happy.
That is impressive.
I'll go ahead and go next. My name is Jackie Chailogen. I work for Matica, which is a fintech company that provides development solutions for financial institutions and secure hardware. I am the Chief Information Security Officer there, and I am based in Northern California near Sacramento in a town called Davis. UC Davis is here if you guys are familiar with that university. Fun fact about me, had to think about it for a while too. I guess I'm gonna go with I love karaoke, and you don't need to give me any liquid courage to get up there and sing. I'll just do it.
Life of the party. Excellent.
Yeah, I'll just jump in. Hi, everyone. I'm Moran Ashkenazi, and I'm Chief Information Security and VP Security Engineering JFrog. I live in Tel Aviv, and I'm doing cybersecurity for almost 22 years. Quite a lot. And I don't know if it's fun, but some hobbies that I have is just I love running, and I wish I could do that more.
Very fun. Definitely useful in terms of health. Is that?
Yeah, I'll go next. Hi, everyone. My name is Nitzan, also from the JFrog security team. I'm leading the SecOps and incident response team here at JFrog. I've been doing security for the last 10 years, I guess. I try to think of something fun, but I guess that in the last this COVID days, not a lot on my area, so I'll need to get back with that.
We'll circle back. You're not the only one. Obviously, it's been probably a not too eventful couple of years in terms of travel or anything like that.
But, trying to think what hobby do I had like 2 years ago, but yeah,
it's been so long. We'll circle back with you on that one, but I suppose let's jump straight in then, really. So again, honored to be here with you all, and number of questions that I'm really keen to get your insight, on before going into new trends, I suppose, for security moving into 2022. Was really keen to kind of take stock in terms of where we are now. So, if we look at recent history, jumping straight in with question number one, how commonplace do you think it will be to see old attacks being carried out successfully due to things like logging and monitoring, i.e., current cybersecurity best practices being missed out on, I suppose, generally, and that's open to the panel.
I've heard a really fun statistic that 25% of all breaches are caused by human error. So I think with that, unfortunately, we are humans, we're not robots. So whether that's accidentally making a true or false, or, forgetting to add an integer. I dated someone who worked in finance in tech, and one day he accidentally lost 72 million pounds because of a simple thing like that. I know he found it, but then stuff couldn't happen. It wasn't a good day in the office. But I think we have to be a bit more empathetic with ourselves sometimes, because a lot of these things are just human error. So it's really about making sure that when we are working, we're present, so we're not making those kind of mistakes. I have another good example. I read this whole Forbes article, and one of them as well was someone in Japan. Instead of one stock for 225,000 yen, they did the other way around, 225,000 stock for 1 yen, which had about a 10% effect on the Nikkei, which is their stock exchange. So, human error happens everywhere, but especially when it comes to security, that's when it can have some really big consequences.
Definitely. So maybe taking stock on, like you say, there's the simple things of, I suppose, staff education. Some things are unavoidable, so perhaps maybe working in some kind of margin in error to allow for those. Those types of things. Mm-hmm. I wonder if the panel had any thoughts in terms of, I suppose things again that you would perhaps take for granted in terms of security best practice. Again, so things like, for instance, monitoring, logging, keeping track of activities that have happened within the business, so that you know what to refer to, or simple things like storing secure information in a secure place, or two-factor authentication, for instance. Is there anything that you would say that probably you would think is obvious, or perhaps common knowledge that most companies should be doing on a day-to-day almost, but perhaps are still missing out on, that might be a current factor that will see sort of carry off into 2022 in terms of really impacting the security space moving forward?
I think it's from my experience, it's nothing new. I think that we still see a lot of like bad practices, like organization don't invest enough in patching and making sure that vulnerabilities are being handled properly. And we still see like very old version of software being publicly exposed and being and exposing an organization to very easy kind of attacks, like working with exploits that can be 5 or 6 or 7 years old, which I guess, like, by scanning the internet, like, very easy task today, and you can know exactly like what version is running and publicly exposed, and like finding an exploit on GitHub even can lead you right in. So it's not like a new trend, but definitely something sorry, that need to be considered more often by security teams.
Definitely.
I think on that as well, don't believe everything you read in Stack Overflow. Some people sometimes write
Exactly.
malicious things. So that, to your point, you just have to be very careful, what information you're getting, where you're getting it from, and how you're using it.
Jackie, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I kind of wanted to go off of what Stefania was saying. Is the biggest vulnerability is human error, right? That's the biggest one across the board. And whether you're talking about people making simple mistakes or exposing, their password because they wrote it down on a Post-it note or something silly like that, or ignoring vulnerabilities and not patching properly, it all rolls up to human mistake pretty much. So I think what we're going to see maybe a little bit more with the old vulnerabilities is those smaller companies that maybe don't have a proper security team in place, and they haven't properly patched, and they're going to be more exposed to these kinds of attacks. You would assume that the larger companies are getting their act together and starting to address these things more proactively, right? So now it's time, let's start looking at the smaller ones and see what we can take advantage of there.
I would add to that, and so agree with you all. And I think that one of the things that we're trying to do so hard today is empower our employees. Yeah, give them, the power to do stuff, to run fast, to develop fast. And with those, that great power come great responsibility. And not necessarily everyone truly understand what can happen if they will just run the Docker image and just start, a new container, and immediately a crypto miner can just start. And I think those situations when we need to just put the boundaries on the right places and keep our employees from cyber attacks. It's not just a human's mistakes, not necessarily they actually know what's going on, all those boundaries, all those layers behind, the software, the simple software that we are delivering. So on top of that, yeah, I truly think that we need to take care of the cloud hygiene so much and help them to just do what they need to. Yeah.
It's a point well made there. So simplistic cloud hygiene as well, as you mentioned. And that kind of, your point there leads quite nicely onto our next question. I will, open back out to the panel. Did anyone have any other points to add, or perhaps any thoughts on Moran's comments there?
I talk about cloud security a lot, and to quote Moran, with great power comes great security vulnerabilities. So I talk about that a lot because it's true, because you're like, oh yeah, it's in the cloud, it's fine. It's not fine. Just because AWS is okay, will handle you if their data center catches on fire. But in terms of authentication, people hacking your crypto miners, that you're on your own for that one. Or, there are people that can help.
Absolutely. We'll definitely circle back to that on a couple of our questions to follow. But I suppose just upon the point of, Moran mentioning in terms of vulnerability with attacks. So, after seeing 2021's global spike in ransomware activity, what trends would you say that you'd expect to see with those specific types of attacks, moving forward when it comes to discussing, ransomware and the market at the moment in terms of where we're heading?
Me. So I think there will be two things around the ransom activity. First, it's even the ransom developed. It's not just a ransom anymore. It's a double and triple ransom, something so complicated. It's not enough just to encrypt your accounts or workloads. I think that one of the outcome of the ransom is how to get into a ransom situation, right? So organization need to focus on their products. And in order to do that, you can see the digital transformation. So, running so fast. So we're adopting more and more SaaS software. Within that, we are open to the supply chain attacks, and we depend on the cloud. Yeah, it's a SaaS software. It's probably super safe because it's X and or Y, company behind that, and they're very strong. So we are depending on others, and that dependency is something that need to be managed, because mistaking the dependency can lead to a ransom. Ransom will come right after Either it's going to be like vulnerability in their code, the supply chain attacks, or a data, exposure. They can just get access, pull off the data, and then you have the triple or outcome of a different ransom when you have like not just encryption, but they're actually stole the data and keep it, and you need to pay off to take it back. So I think that evolvement with the digital transformation will take us to complicated situation or a single or triple ransom activities.
With digital transformation will come more complex forms of attack to pick at those gaps being created.
Yeah, it's not like access to the data center anymore. It's so distributed. The data is so distributed. So it's not just on that, go to the data center, hack it, encrypt it, and that's it. You have the key. It's not that the data is all over. It's so complex today, and it's going to be more and more involved. So I think that ransom will be outcome, but the different attack chain will be in place. Definitely, it will be more complicated.
It's an interesting.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. Stefania, thoughts?
I was going to say, because I'm actually stealing someone else's point of view, because I was at a really interesting talk and I was like, you know what, you're right. And it's great for this conversation, because if we look back a couple of years ago, what used to happen, like Equifax, Marriott Hotels, they used to empty the database. They used to go in, like, we've got 500 million personal records, we've got birthdays, we've got emails, and sometimes obviously credit card numbers.
All the PII.
All the PII, exactly. But what would happen to some extent is the people at, obviously there's a big news scandal and it's, bad PR, but actually it's like, so, okay, so you've got all this data, it's on a secret database on the dark web. So then what would happen with the hackers is that now it's at a point where they're like, okay, so stealing personal data, obviously it's bad. I'm not saying it's just so, but now with the ransomware, it's like, oh, you're now locked out of your system. You cannot do anything. You are totally, I'll just say effed. So it's a lot more like, instead of so what, it's like, okay, this is mission critical. So I think there's been a transition where now hackers are really out for the jugular. So, to Moran's point about digital transformation, it will get more complex, but it's definitely going to be about stopping the business, versus before when it was just about, stealing PII.
Absolutely. Nitzan?
Yeah, I can definitely agree and want to add. I think that as these kind of attacks getting more traction, and I think that today ransomware is probably one of the top type of attacks we see going on, and I think that the organization understand that and start building like plans how to handle ransomware, which makes attackers be much more sophisticated. And like if ransomware attacks was only encrypting files, then now organization knows that they need to back up and export their backups out. And I think that attackers will be understand that and will be try to find like new ways to do that, like not just target the organization, probably target also like other victims. And we saw that sometimes data, like sensitive data, is being steal from the organization, and then like customers of the organization are being targeted. So now someone can get an email saying we stole your credit card, we stole your personal information, like health records, stuff like that. And if you want us not publishing it, then pay up.
Definitely, you raise an interesting point there as well in terms of the complexity, again, of how that can fall back not just on the organization, but on their customers as well. Jackie?
I think what I'm expecting to see is a targeted attacks towards individuals over social engineering, trying to find those vulnerabilities in people, like we were just talking about a few minutes ago. And Moran's absolutely right. Education and empowerment and training people on how to identify those, catfishing at a kind of another level, whole nother level, and being able to avoid those kind of attacks and trying to glean information out of people is going to become extremely important. Proper training. I definitely see social media as becoming a way that hackers will use to try to get more and more information out of people and exploit them.
Definitely. And interestingly enough, I've actually recently heard some conjecture that perhaps moving into next year, there might even be a case of, even simulated ransomware attacks where perhaps even the threat of, data being released or perhaps somebody being compromised, because it's now so much more commonplace, perhaps in some cases leads to less actual, support behind that threat. So even the threat of it itself might become, in terms of social engineering, might become a pressure point. I just wondered if anyone had any thoughts on that in terms of, ransomware gaining steam as a thing, as an entity rather than a tangible, malware as well.
I was going to play devil's advocate just as you were talking, because if it becomes commonplace as it is, I'm not sure if everyone is familiar with Netflix's Chaos Monkeys or Chaos Engineering. So I'll just give a quick description, which is, if your bike went flat, would you know how to change the wheel? What about if you changed it every Sunday? And the same applies to tech. So Netflix is like, let's just wipe out that data center. Let's just turn off all the security. So maybe we need to start, having more, testing, Chaos Monkeys for stuff like ransomware. Okay, let's get on Tuesday, the 3rd of December. Oh no, 2nd. I don't know what day it is. But anyway, next Tuesday, we're going to do a practice ransomware and see what happens. And we might not tell anyone. I don't know. But I think maybe that kind of thing needs to be, brought more into the main stage, because it is growing, so it definitely needs to be protected against.
So I agree with you. So those ransom drills and simulate is definitely something that I can tell that we're investing in that on our daily, and it's one of the biggest plans for 2022 is actually do the drill and do live drill, and then also roundtable around it, and then lesson learned from that, and super important. Because it's not a ransom, prevention or be able to protect the organization or recovery fast. It's not just backup and plan. It's different, two different things. Backup plan and BCP plan. It's one thing and it's great and it's super important for availability. But when it goes to ransom, it's a different use case. You need to have vault accounts that will keep and store all the data in an interval. It's a different approach because you don't want the backup to be encrypted as well. So you'll be dead, and that's not the purpose. And I think it's different approach. The BCP will involve, and you're gonna see a lot of I think developer organization that will put and invest time and effort to think about how to recover from ransom. And not just have backup. Yeah, it's cloud native, it's all backup, all cool, great. It's not. In case of ransom, they will back up and encrypted your backup as well. It's not going to help you. So yeah, I'm totally agree with Stefania that this is a super important drill to run in organizations. Thanks.
Adding small, I guess, thing to that is also making sure to making sure your team is ready for that. Do drills with the people, with the teams. Make sure your incident response team know how to handle that. It's not just, as Moran mentioned, it's not just backing up or doing drill on your infrastructure or making sure you can move from that one data center to another. Is make sure that the team know I'm not sure if expect is the right way to do that, but know how to handle this kind of incident.
Absolutely, as they say, prevention is the best cure. So yeah, having those those processes in place to be able to make sure that everyone's positioned and preemptively have some kind of pre-approved process in place would be ideal. Failing that, I suppose, and that leads us fairly neatly onto our next question. In terms of the the regulations that are in place now for when ransomware attacks do occur and businesses do find themselves vulnerable, and targeted to make payments through cryptocurrency. Recent regulations were put in place with sanctions on payments through cryptocurrency and ways to perhaps deter these types of attacks and ways in which they can be remunerated. But how do you think that the trends of combating these types of attacks in 2022 will start to evolve, when they do occur?
So I have it's not funny, but I have a funny personal story. I was at the gym. There's a guy that I sometimes talk to. He works in finance. I said I worked in cybersecurity. And he's like, oh yeah, my friend's business got hacked. They said 200 million euros. Oh, but it was okay. The insurers paid it off. They only paid off 50 million euros. And I'm there like, because I think a lot of the time we think about this, obviously we're all, the white hats, security, we're the good guys, you have the hacker, the bad guys, but we're all very technical. So we know that to do a sophisticated attack isn't that expensive. And if you're going to give a nefarious group 50 million, that's going to really power them. So I think a lot of the time, you see in all the films, it's like, we do not negotiate with terrorists. But I think that we have to strike a balance between, okay, if you've got a ransomware and your business is incapacitated, but they want a lot of money, how much are you willing to give? Because any money you give them, it's just, funding their future. So I think that's a kind of a disconnect as well, because like I said, we all know hacks aren't that expensive and there's stuff on the internet you can buy for almost free. But, like I said, this guy was about my age and we were just in the gym and it's like, no, it's fine. He only had to pay 50 million. And like my face of shock, he didn't get it and I didn't get how he hid. So I think there's definitely, when we look at like the insurers, and the regulation that's coming into place, you need to also bear in mind that perspective as well as security. From a selfish perspective, working in security, having it in the news a lot about the ransomware, I have family asking me, which is rare because no one ever knew what cybersecurity was before. So I think as an industry, I think businesses are going to catch on because they realize, oh, it's great, we're all digital, but then you obviously have to secure it. You would have security if you had a building, so why don't you have it for your cloud environment, etc.
Very good point. And Jackie, it looked like you were going to interject.
I kind of wanted to go off of what Stefania was saying about insurance companies. This is where I think it's going to kind of trickle down from. We're starting with regulations. Insurance companies are going to look at these regulations, and then the insurance company's goal is to not pay out. They don't want to pay out. So they're going to start putting in rules in place themselves that say, you need to be having these kinds of policies and procedures in place. You need to have ransomware drills that you're doing on a regular basis. And it's going to start from there and kind of go down from there. That's how I see it, envision it anyway.
Yeah, I've been reading, there was an article in Reuters a few weeks ago about specifically ransomware and insurers. And as a trend, what you're seeing is 10 million used to be standard. Now it's 5 million. So half the amount, but it's double the price because as you said, the insurers don't want to pay out. So all of a sudden cyber insurance is really expensive. I don't work in finance, so I don't quite understand the numbers, but 100% is you break even. And I think they're at 95%. So all of a sudden it's not a profitable market. And as you said, we're going to see that trickling through in requirements for organizations.
That's interesting. So from the insurance perspective, in terms of what marginal gains are available from even a successful ransom being paid, doesn't sustain the operation in terms of longevity or encourage them to even continue that trend. That's a really interesting, I think, key note to take from that as well. Moran, you were going to... Yeah,
I just wanted to say that eventually with all the regulations and legislations and how you want to really be the pioneer and fight against the attacker, eventually when the business shut down, the CEO needs to make a decision, and it's financial decision eventually. So it's really great that he has like cybersecurity insurance and that the insurance company want or don't want to pay. It doesn't matter. Or there is legislation of the cryptocurrency payments, etc. You can kill the passengers, and it's great. It's okay. Everything is great. It's improvement of the process, and I think it should be in place, and it's super important. But eventually, it's CFO and CEO decisions either to pay or not, and that's something that will definitely, that's the action item that will come out of when a crisis like that will happen. And I think it will, people still will pay for the bad. They will pay for that because they want the business up and running. And sometimes it's even cheaper than, you know, against that, and then, you know, stop and fight and be evangelist, and then just this is something that most of the CEOs will need to make the right decision for them, for the company. That's what I'm thinking about it.
Tough to strike that balance, definitely. Nissan, you look like you're going to chime in there.
I think that also, I mean, in terms of, you mentioned the sanctions, I think it's something that should be globally adopted. If it's something that we really want to see slowing down as attackers, because if it will be only, you know, only one place, I think that hackers will know like where to push in order to get paid. Like if, for example, the US decide to put on the sanctions, but other countries won't, then you see more and more hackers targeting companies that don't do that, and all companies that will decide to, I don't know, pay from not the US companies, but other companies that don't have any sanction in place. And also, I guess that putting the pressure on the companies or other companies that involved in paying to these attackers, I think that if the countries won't help organization, because as Moran mentioned, it's a financial decision, and I don't want to be in a place that the company is getting attacked, and the pressure you have to get your data back or getting back on your feet, then you'll get to the point that you probably pay as a last resort. So
sure.
we need to find solution in order, like solution for companies, or to feel safe, or to if you don't deal with terrorists, at least have like the backup.
Yeah, that's an important point. I've seen some, again, some conjecture in terms of, regulation for next year outside of just those kind of sanctions, that perhaps more organizations will be added, for instance, in the US, to what's considered a terrorist organization, and therefore there are extra regulations in place that will support the business, and, they can feel, safer there. There will also be, I suppose perhaps even in the sense to encourage which decision the business choose to make, that there might be more sort of regulations strictly on not just what the business chooses to, how they've responded, or the time in which they've taken them to respond, but how transparent they've been with what has occurred, and in that sense encouraging them to perhaps to choose the course of action that's going to be a little bit more prevalent to avoiding, enabling ransomware, and perhaps quelling the hunger for organizations to target companies a bit more widely. Just before we move on to our next question, then, were there any other points that anyone wanted to add to what was just mentioned a moment ago?
Buy crypto mining. Yes, invest in crypto. I think it's a good thing to do.
As a nice side note there. Yeah, perfect. Well, I mean, moving into the next one, so, and keeping on the theme of regulation slightly, really I think it's kind of over to the folks on the panel, I suppose, to each of you individually. What kind of legislation would you like to see coming into effect that would help make your jobs and your task in terms of protecting your organization, I suppose, easier and more simple?
I can just go first because I technically work for a vendor. So any legislation which is like, you must buy this vendor, that would be great for me. But I'll leave it to everyone else because I know you've got a much better customer perspective.
I think that maybe I'm not sure if it's like defining a standard, but I think that asking organization or telling organization to be better prepared to this kind of attacks, like not ransomware specifically, but like asking organization to be better prepared to incident response, or better prepared to like to deal with catastrophe, whether if it's from cyber or even from an infrastructure point of view, will definitely allow organization to deal with it better, to deal with catastrophe, like cyber catastrophe better, and will also, like, if regulation will stay that organization need to be better prepared to cyber attack, then like the cyber security leads in the organization have the backup of the from the management to do this kind of things, to making sure that we have drills in place, and Stefania mentioned that to do this like what Netflix, I forgot the name, Netflix are doing. So if it will be like something that every organization is doing, then definitely will help the teams to handle, the security team to handle these issues.
Jackie?
In my particular space, PCI is king. So I would like to see PCI kind of catch up with the technology that's going around right now. Some of the standards that are in place are they're very sweeping and large requirements that smaller companies or you know, the small app developer is trying to adhere to. And it just hasn't quite caught up with and it probably never will, but at least maybe get a little closer to what's been going on without stifling ingenuity, right? That's part of the problem that regulations always have. But I think if you get granular enough, not too granular, but a little bit more granular on the roads that people are taking in their ingenuity, it can certainly help keep them from being stifled with what they're trying to build or what they're trying to create. So that's kind of what I'm hoping for. We're expecting some PCI changes next year. So I'm hoping that we'll see some stuff that will go along with where the technology is going.
I'm curious about two new, let's call it practices, right? The first one is around the one that Joe, you know, they made on around the White House executive order supply chain, something that I can't wait, you know, to see. And I'm sure it's going to be like NIST best practices in the industry standard around the supply chain. It's something super important in my perspective, because it will take us to, you know, practices around product security. Not necessarily all the companies adopting that today, from, you know, code review tools and static and dynamic code analysis, software composition tools that should be in place and you know, mutable around the APIs and pen testing tools. Those kind of area is something that I think that is and it's led me to the second. The second one is around vendor vetting. Today, it's super complex. Every new vendor, you need to have their questionnaires, try to understand if they're secure enough, how to make the decisions. And there is no standards. We keep getting tons of questionnaires and asking tons of different questionnaires, and there is no standard around that. And I want to have a, you know, a baseline of tools, which kind of maturity security level you are, and then to make a decision, what kind of data you are, you know, keeping on my environment. It's a SaaS that I should adopt if it's, you know, keep secrets or something that is super sensitive, or, you know, reduce the risk, and it's something that I can handle if his maturity security will be like it's good enough, then we can go. It has nothing to do with, you know, my secret sauce or stuff like that. So something like that need to have like practices in place and automated tools that will make organization that not necessarily have like compliance team in place or security ops that can actually vetting and understand if it's good or not for their organization and make the decision easier and much more faster. I think those kind of not non-standard, everyone are doing SSDLC by their own. Everyone are doing, you know, vetting of third-party vendors by their own. There is no standard around that. And I think it's super, I can't say that it will make my life easier, but I think it's a practice that the industry should adopt.
And on that point as well, of visibility into, you know, vendor selection, and I think a bit more of a streamlined process in terms of what, you know, what compliance and regulation you know, points. have to be considered. I was wondering, Stefania, from the vendor side, are there any, outside of just a regulation that says yes, you should be using these vendors to enable X, Y, Z, is there anything that more practicably could be in place that would help to streamline any sort of partnership or integration, or from the outsider's perspective looking in?
So yeah, and just on a side note, when you started talking about these questionnaires, that at my last place, that was a big part of my job, because I would have to speak to, say, the bank and be like, oh, please fill in the questionnaire. And I'd be like, okay, another one. One time I got about, I think it was 7,000 questions in 2 weeks. And then that was also in Q4. So that was fun. But anyway, back to the original question. So I think it can be quite complicated. A CISO or a BISO or anyone working in security, your life's not getting any easier. We've obviously got cloud that we've mentioned. I think the first iPhone was 2007. I do all my shopping on mobile. I don't know what I did before. So I think it can be very kind of, as I said, if you are working in AppSec, you're probably overworked. And I think, to Moran's point, if we could have like a kind of more of a standard, like what do we want from our vendors? Okay, we want data integrity. We want to make sure that everyone's using 2FA on their laptops from the vendor perspective. Having almost like a standard, a secure standard for vendors, having something a bit more, standardized would obviously kind of really help. I've worked at a couple of different vendors, so, in a few different security spaces. And I think a lot of the time, and this is a personal preference, I like to work for places where it's, up and coming, and it's a new space and all this. So I end up being more of a, advocate and kind of explaining. Say, for example, open source software about 5 years ago, people were like, no, we don't really use open source. And then it kind of, the next conversation was, oh, okay, yeah, we have a bit, but I'm sure it's fine. And then you start doing all the open source scans and you're coming up with vulnerable versions of libraries that haven't been, updated. So I think a lot of the time, at least from my perspective, customers look to vendors to, for advice, because vendors are dealing with this, I do DevSecOps all day, every day. But it's really about, to Moran's point, making sure that, the vendors you're working for are reputable, they take security seriously, and they're there to help. They want to build the relationship, rather than someone who's just going to be like, yeah, give me a couple of thousand and I'll protect you from ransomware. Okay, but how? You know what I mean? So I think it's very much about trusting your vendors, working together, and staying secure.
Fantastic point, and obviously addressed some of the comments that we had there from Jessica Chappell. Thanks for your input there with regards to open source as well. And
I hadn't even seen that, Jessica, with me the same. Wow, amazing.
Yeah, it's just so neatly it's matched up. But yeah, that was quite a point that was raised as well, moving towards open source. But again, as quite rightly as Jessica's mentioned, obviously a huge security concern beginning, but over time, it will evolve and things will become more standardized, as a common practice. Were there any other points to add on to that just before we moved on there as well? Right, the panelists. Well, just in between, before we move on to our next question as well, had the feedback from our first poll, to which 80% of people felt that, do you feel that you have an inclusive hiring process? 80% yes, none for no, but another 20% for we're getting there, but it's slow progress. So just before we do move on to our next question, as a general point in terms of inclusive hiring processes, I don't know whether anyone on our panel might have any sort of tips or comments as to what perhaps some of the our attendees that are trying but perhaps finding some difficulty in working inclusivity into their hiring process, what they could do to account for that, perhaps, from what you've experienced, if at all.
So this is actually before I worked in tech, but I was interviews, and then I went on site and had a series of interviews in a row. And after the third guy, who was quite senior, he was a director, he was like, hey, you've only met men so far, I'm going to bring some women in. which, okay, now we look back, this was about 7 years ago, and it's a bit of a weird thing to say, but actually at the time I was like, oh, great, cool, I'm gonna, have female friends. So I think having, diversity as part of the interview process can only help candidates. Also, I used to work in recruitment for a few years as well. It was actually a recruitment job I was just talking about. And I think job descriptions are a massive one, because I personally, probably going to offend a lot of people in the audience, but I'm not a Jedi. And, I know I can't admit it because it's recorded, but I don't know that much about sci-fi trivia. I know a bit about Marvel. But anyway, with the job descriptions, you want to, have a non-white male look over it and just see if there are any tweaks. Even stuff like JDs, because that's often, top of the funnel. If you have 10 requirements, I speak from experience, I coached a lot of my female friends through this. If a woman, and this is a massive stereotype, and I'm talking in general with younger females because I know a lot of them or knew them. If a woman can't do 10, she can only do 8 or 9, she's probably not going to apply. And if a guy can do 1 or 2, he's like, yeah, I've got it. So even just breaking your JD into like 5 bullet points and 5 nice to have, that can have a massive improvement on diversity. But I'll stop talking now. I'll leave it to the rest of the panel to chime in.
I think it's very interesting that it's still like that. And I can tell from my own experience that I was like that when I was younger, like couple of years ago, and it's really shocking that it's still like that. And the way I see it, and because we're interviewing like on a daily, right? It's our second job is like recruiting and interviewing and try to bring more great people into our great team. And I think that one of the things that we should involve and should invest is to do the onboarding right, because there is no perfect candidate. If a security engineer is become an expert after 2 years in JFrog, for sure, we're not going to have like another great guy like him. And we always try to compare and, we cannot be like that, because we invest 2 years within him and he evolved and he developed himself, etc. And he's familiar with the JFrog or the company. And at that point of view, I truly think that we need to change the way we're onboarding employees and try to give them the path to become an awesome. Even though we don't have the perfect candidate, but he has like strong baseline and passion to do what needs to be done. The expectations should be also something that we're really aligned on. And we need to take him to the path to become, what we are looking forward, and put all those great, terms from the beginning. You have to do this and that, and totally agree with Stefania, like put all those 10 great engineer, super engineering in the front. For sure, we're not going to have it. That's a 100%. It's not going to happen. So be realistic and try to find the baseline, identify them within the tech interviews, and then try to take him to the next level by yourself. And it's not easy path, by the way. We are every day thinking about academy, our own academy, and how to do it right. It's something that we need to invest in order to do better recruiting and onboarding processes.
It's an excellent point in terms of understanding the individualism in the particular candidate, and then not standardizing and working with that to evolve and investing the time where it needs to be in each individual case. I think is probably the real key point to take from that as well. But some excellent points overall. And Jackie, you look like you were going to interject there as well.
Just a few things that have come across my mind in the last few years that especially when we've done some hiring, and you've already kind of said this, Stefania, when we have candidates who apply and the confidence, I don't see it in the female candidates as much as I see it in the male candidates. And I think what we need to do as people, as women, or underrepresented people in positions of hiring power, is to mentor and make sure that people younger than us, people entering the workforce, can build up that confidence within themselves, and make sure that they enter the workforce with somebody that's kind of got their back. That would have been incredibly empowering for me, as I was coming up. I've said this a lot to my teams is, you know, when we're in the positions that we're in, you always talk about climbing the corporate ladder. Well, when you're at the top, it's your job to reach down and pull people up. And that's what we need to be doing. Mentoring and starting those internships that people can enter in, get confident in a job and using their skills, and then take that, whether it's somewhere else or into a permanent position in your company, either way, those things are critically important. And I would have loved to have that when I was coming up many, many years ago.
Yeah, just on that, you've made me think of a little happy story, but I had a similar experience when I first started in tech. I remember the first Friday afternoon call when I was going to meet the rest of the team, and I was the only woman, and everyone was white. There was actually one Indian guy in America, but I was the only woman. And then there were no women in senior leadership, and I didn't know any women in tech, and there were no female role models. And I was like in my mid-20s, and I remember sitting there and like, okay, I need to be the role model I want to see, so that way one day I will inspire future generations. And then a couple of months ago, I had a meetup at 6 a.m. because it was with Australia, because my Australian HQ, my ex-company was Australian HQ. So I was up bright and early doing this talk. And then I got these LinkedIn messages from these, you know, women who had just graduated. And they're like, wow, I really loved your session. It was so great, so cool. And now I've got 2 little mentees. And that's the thing, little differences that we can make as women with either hiring power or, you know, women, you know, that are visible can make a big difference for the future generation. Because that's my whole drive with public speaking, is because I'm not your average security techie person. And I hope that if I'm, you know, out there talking about stuff, that hopefully I'll inspire other people to join. So never underestimate the effect that you personally can have on other people, you know, butterfly effect, etc.
Going on with that, yeah, creating that safe space is so important. And yeah, that's what you're doing. And that's awesome.
Excellent points there. And, you know, I think that's really invaluable, you know, context from, especially from everyone that's kind of been there and done it, and it is on the inside, the other side of the fence. It can, I suppose, for people when they're seeking an opportunity from the other side of the fence, seem a little bit like it's all, you know, just a sort of, you know, like a logo almost, or like a, you know, faceless entity that they're applying to. But these are, you know, real people that are, you know, you are all the others, the folks on the other side that have been there and are really keen to kind of, you know, to enable that change as well. So it's really encouraging to hear, and, you know, really exciting to see. You know, certainly from my side, it really mimics everything that I see, both in terms of what, you know, our candidates want to see, and also on the client side as well, with working with, you know, folks like yourself that are, you know, really engaged in that space. So that's really helpful. I appreciate your input there. So we've got quite a few questions on our Q&A that we'll circle back to perhaps before we move on any further as well, just to address some of the topics that have been covered. So we have the most recent ones from Andreas Mueller on the points we were discussing with regards to kind of regulation and change as well, but asks, do you think with regards to 2022 that most developers are aware that the usage of container technologies adds new layers for security vulnerabilities?
Looking forward to see the results.
I'm going to say it depends on the developer.
Yeah, a developer out there, they probably won't want to see more regulations around.
From my developer team, I think I can say that they're probably not aware of it as much as I would like them to be. So it's kind of my job to make sure that they're getting their secure coding training every year, and informing them of what, you know, what things are out there that could trip them up as they're coding.
I agree with you. I think we're investing so much on the champion, you know, program internally as DLC, and educate them and create some, you know, great security talk, heck, and show our results, get into, you know, the developer mindset and make him really understand that and like it, and be passionate about that. And I think that's the thing behind it, because if it's not relevant, they won't join. But if it's something that they will educate from and they will learn something new, I would like to learn something new. I love learning, you know, and educate myself. It's so selfish, but I do. And I think it's a great point of view, you know, get into their mindset and understand what they love to hear. And that's something that we should drive with, you know. So I would vote for the third. And I have something to say about the first as well. But let's see the voting.
Interesting to see. Nitzan, just while that's coming in, any thoughts to add there finally?
It's a tough question, I guess. I mean, I'm not sure. I think that it's kind of still pretty much on the security team responsibility to make sure that, like, I guess it's containers also considered as an infrastructure, in my opinion. And I think that if our job was to make sure that the infrastructure for developers stays safe, I think that even like now with containers in place, it's still something that the security team needs to make sure that it's like being more secured. Yes, definitely we need to add like extra training and explaining like what are the security concerns and what issues it can bring. But it's still kind of our responsibility to make sure it's they don't do mistakes.
Appreciated. Well, I appreciate that also. I'm conscious of folks on our panel's time, so I know that we are at the 10:30 mark now, just over. What we will do is, because we've had some excellent dialogue this morning, and we've still got quite a few points that we hadn't gone through. There are a number of people that have chimed in on the Q&A as well. So what we can do is host a blog for some of the unanswered questions to see if we can kind of get some continued discussion around that. Before we kind of go into our the networking session afterwards, wondered if we had any closing questions or closing comments from our panel. What I'm seeing, just if this was of interest, I know that Moran, you've seen that the poll go around there. What trend are you most interested to see develop next year? We've got 48% have said improved threat intelligence, 20% improved regulations around incident reporting, and then 32% that have said more internal company education for non-security personnel. So it's a very close race, but it looks like it's between improved threat intelligence as the overall winner, but perhaps some education for non-security personnel. I don't know whether there was any comments regarding that specifically, but just in general, before we wrap up here and go on to our networking session, were there any closing comments from everyone that we've got here today?
Just a quick one from me, not much to do with what we talked about. I touched on it a bit at the beginning, but we are all humans. Most of us work in security. I'm sure there are people in the audience from all, walks of tech, shall I say, but it's really important to bear in mind that, we're trying to be a team. So when security fails your builds, we're not doing it out of spite. We're doing it because we don't want to be on the front page. So it's really about, taking a step back, less friction, less finger pointing, thinking, more pragmatically, okay, let's stay safe, let's stay secure, let's just be nice to each other. So I'm all about, let's be empathetic and treat each other as people and with respect, rather than, being mean to security because we're just doing our jobs.
I definitely agree. And I think that like empowering the security brand in organization is super important. I think that it's very clear in JFrog that we really try to make security more approachable and make people like giving them the idea that security can be nice and not just a blocker. Definitely with production and DevOps teams and infrastructure team, but also with like non-technical people. Giving them more tools, giving them more training, giving them more ability to do security right, and not just doing those yearly, annually, monthly, or whatever training saying that phishing is bad and do nots. Do it in a fun way. I mean, it's as you mentioned, it's definitely something we don't want to be in the news.
yeah, we don't want to be on the front page for the wrong reasons. And likewise, tapping into Stefania's point, we are all human. So why not make it fun and something that people want to invest their time and energy into learning more about and, you know, becoming a part of as well. Jackie, your final comments.
Yeah, it's an excellent point. You know, we're not the enemy. We're your friend. We're trying to protect you and the company. But I think that's one thing that's really important is we're also trying to protect you, right? Yes, the company might be a target, and Moran brought this up earlier, but you might also be the target. And any education that we give you and any rules we put in place that you learn why those rules exist can help you in your personal life, not just in your career.
It starts with their personal life, then it goes to their code. It's a matter of maturity, you know, and your care, basically. Yeah, can't agree more.
Lovely. Well, I think that's the perfect point, and I'm looking forward to seeing everyone from our audience that can make it in our networking session now. I'd love to pick this up as well. I don't know, panelists, are you available to join? Perhaps I think I'll hand over to Lauren to deal with the interim.
Hi, thank you, Jacob, and thank you to all of our panelists. That was a very, very interesting conversation, a ton of learning points there. I've taken a ton of notes myself, and I really hope that every single person that does log on either live or later in the line has learned something. And just want to say thank you, all of you, for being so honest and engaging and raw with your comments and discussion. And as Jacob mentioned, what we do is a bit of a follow-up blog. So there's a ton of questions there, and I want to make sure that you know, everyone can participate. If you are still free, please join us over on the live networking. I've also popped a link into the box for the JFrog giveaway and the conference tickets. And I just want to say, yeah, again, a huge thank you to all of our panelists. Thank you for your time, your support, and all of your insight. And I hope to see you all again very soon. Just a quick note on the panelists. If any of our attendees today did want to, you know, connect with you on LinkedIn or reach out or drop you a follow on Twitter, are you comfortable for them to do so? Perfect, excellent. Okay, well, we'll grab those details and we'll include those in the blogs, and we'll go from there. And just a huge thank you again for everyone. I'll see you over in the networking, and the link's just gone in the box again. And wherever you are in the world, have a great morning, afternoon, or evening. And thank you again for joining us today, Women in DevOps Security Trends 2022. Bye, folks.